Assalamu alaikum dear students. I am going to make a comparison of the spellings in Old English and Middle English, and I hope and expect that by the end of this session you will have some understanding of the similarities as well as the differences between the spellings and the spelling conventions in Old English and Middle English. Well, my dear students, a language does not change in a day. In fact, languages change over time. So, same was the case with English language. It took a process of centuries to change at all the levels, be those phonological, morphological, semantic, or syntactic. When it comes to spellings in English language, the spellings in English language also changed through the times. The traditions that we had in Old English, some of them were continued, some were changed during the Middle English period, and same happened in the upcoming times. In fact, in writing, the West Saxon literary traditions were continued for such a long time that they had their impact. In less than a century, we can say that the Old English period is over after the French took over and that Middle English period started. The conquest makes it look more sudden than it really was, and as a matter of fact, what I would say is when we read it in books, when we read it in, the records of history, we find as if this change has taken place suddenly. But actually, it is a process of decades rather of centuries. Same happened to the spelling conventions. They did not change overnight. An already established literary language like West Saxon tends to be conservative in its spellings. Changes occur in it in terms of pronunciation, but the scribes often go on writing the words in the traditional way. The scribes who are the writers, who, write the narratives and all the kind of stuff that they record. But the Norman scribes disregarded the traditional English spelling. Because of the Norman tradition, they would follow the conventions that the Norman French had, and they did not care for the English spelling. They spelled the language as they heard it, and they started writing it as it fell on their ear. Consequently, many changes that had not been reflected in Old English spelling or which had appeared only in occasional spellings, now they emerged very, very clearly. When it comes to the new spelling conventions of the Middle English period, I would say the new orthography gave English writings quite a new look. This was more modern than ever, and a lot of it is carried through to the modern times. For example, a number of new consonant symbols were introduced. A new symbol, here you can see it on the screen, was introduced for the stops represented by the Old English, this symbol that I have encircled. And the Old English symbol was also retained only for the fricative sounds. The sounds that are produced, for example, f sound, which are produced with, that kind of sounds. So, the examples of this sound are decision, jn, j sound, usually, j sound, television, j sound. Alright, so this is how it was distinguished. Where Old English had used f, notice on the screen, to represent both the sounds, this F letter was used for two sounds, f sound and v sound. 5, for example, in Old English would be written like with these same spellings. It is written like this. So, for this F, this sign represents both the sounds, f sound and the v sound. In Middle English, the scribes used, this or this, which were allographs at the period for the various sounds. Same happened to z and z. So, in the Middle English period, they were separated, whereas before that, there was only one sign in writing for both the sounds of each of the pairs. Here on the screen, what you can notice is there is a complete table that shows a comparison. If you look at the top, you would notice this is the pronunciation that is given. Here you can notice these are the spellings in Old English and these are the spellings in Middle English. And by the way, here are examples from Middle English. Let us look at the spelling traditions of Old English. So this combination was used in Old English for the pronunciation qu, as in quick or as in queen. But this particular spelling changed to, the spelling that now we use. This came into being somewhere in Middle English. Also, notice this one, for example. This is sh. This is sound sh. Now, in Old English, it was written like this. So, for example, if the word shift is to be written in Old English, it would be written like something like this. Alright? But this changed to something very modern in the Middle English period here. But you can see also other varieties because there were different dialects in the Middle English time which had different spellings. So all these three spellings, 1, 2 and 3, were used for this sh sound in Middle English period. So on and so forth. You can make comparison of all these Old English spellings with these modern Middle English spellings that are modern in their nature as compared to the Old English, and many of them are carried, if you look at the examples, you would realize through the times to the modern English as well. So I would say that Middle English period in terms of spelling was a period of great transition. It was a period where the spellings were changed to a great extent, and there was a lot of development in English language with reference to orthography.